The collision happened so fast I barely had time to hit the brakes. 1 second I was pulling into the Loblaws parking lot on a frigid January morning. The next I heard the sickening crunch of metal against metal. My 15-year-old Ford F-150, the truck I'd bought used when I started my landscaping business, had just been rear-ended by a gleaming white Range Rover. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, watching my breath fog up in the cold cab. The heater in my truck had been acting up lately, another thing I couldn't afford to fix just yet. Through my rearview mirror, I could see a woman in the Range Rover, her blonde hair perfectly styled, talking animatedly on her phone. She didn't look concerned. She looked annoyed. I stepped out into the biting Toronto wind, my worn work jacket doing little to keep out the cold. It was 7:30 inches the morning, and I'd been on my way to pick up supplies before heading to my first job of the day. Winter was slow season for landscaping, but I'd managed to line up some snow removal contracts to keep things going until spring. The woman finally emerged from her vehicle, still on her phone. She was probably in her early 40s, wearing a Canada Goose parka that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and carrying a handbag I recognized from my ex-wife's endless browsing as Hermes. She glanced at my truck's damaged bumper with the same expression someone might reserve for stepping in dog waste. "I need to call you back," she said into her phone, her voice dripping with irritation. Not concern, not apology. Irritation. "Are you okay?" I asked, doing a quick visual check of her vehicle. The Range Rover had some front-end damage, but nothing compared to what my truck had sustained. She looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a calculus equation. "Am I okay? Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost to fix?" I blinked. "Ma'am, you hit me." I was stopped, waiting for a parking spot. "That's not how I saw it," she said, examining her manicured nails. "You reversed into me." The audacity of the lie left me momentarily speechless. "There are cameras all over this parking lot." She smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. "Do you know who my husband is?" "Marcus Vanderbrook. He owns the Vanderbrook Group. Half the commercial real estate in this city belongs to him." She stepped closer, her expensive perfume cutting through the crisp winter air, including this shopping center. "So go ahead, check those cameras. See how far that gets you." My jaw tightened. I'd dealt with difficult clients before, people who thought money gave them the right to treat others like servants, but this was something else entirely. "I still need your insurance information," I said, keeping my voice level. She laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. "My insurance? Honey, you're driving a truck that looks like it's held together with duct tape and hope. This is clearly a cash grab. Let me guess, you're going to claim whiplash next?" "I just want this handled properly." "Fine." She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of my license plate. "My husband's lawyers will be in touch, and trust me, they're the best in the country. We have attorneys on retainer who've handled cases in the Supreme Court." "What do you have?" "Some legal aid lawyer who works out of a strip mall." She climbed back into her Range Rover without another word, leaving me standing in the parking lot, my truck damaged, my morning schedule completely derailed. As she drove away, I noticed her vanity plate, MV Brook 1. I took photos of everything, the damage, the skid marks on the icy pavement, the position of the vehicles. Then I went inside Loblaws and asked to speak to the manager about the parking lot cameras. The manager, a tired-looking man named Ron, listened to my story and shook his head. "I can put in a request for the footage, but I have to tell you, we're required to forward those requests to the property management company. And the property management company is, let me guess, Vanderbrook Group." "Yeah." He looked genuinely sympathetic. "I'm sorry, man. These people, they own everything. But I'll submit the request anyway. Maybe you'll get lucky." I drove to my first job with a crumpled bumper and a growing sense of unease. The client, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow I'd been clearing snow for all winter, took one look at my truck and insisted on making me tea. "What happened?" she asked, setting a steaming mug in front of me at her kitchen table. I told her the whole story. Mrs. Patterson had lived in Toronto for 60 years and had seen the city transform from a collection of neighborhoods into a sprawling metropolis dominated by development companies. "Vanderbrook," she said, her lips pursing. "I know that name. They've been trying to buy up properties in this area for years, pushed out half the small businesses on Queen Street." She patted my hand. "You be careful with people like that. They don't play fair." Over the next few days, I tried to handle things through official channels. I filed a police report, though the officer who took my statement seemed skeptical about my chances of getting anywhere. I contacted my insurance company, only to find out that without the parking lot footage or witnesses, it would be my word against hers, and my premiums would likely skyrocket regardless of the outcome. Then, 3 days after the accident, I received a letter from a law firm, Henderson, Price, and Associates, with an address in the financial district that probably cost more per square foot than my entire house. The letter was professionally threatening, informing me that Mrs. Vanderbrook was pursuing a claim against me for damages to her vehicle, emotional distress, and loss of use. They were demanding $47,000. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table in the small house I'd bought after my divorce. My daughter Emma's drawings from her last visit still decorated the fridge. She was 7 now, living with her mother in Mississauga, and I saw her every other weekend. The child support payments were tight but manageable. This lawsuit would destroy me. I called the law firm the next morning. The receptionist transferred me to a junior associate who spoke to me with barely concealed condescension. "Mr. Reeves, my client has made her position clear. Your negligent driving caused significant damage. We have Mrs. Vanderbrook's testimony, which is quite credible given her standing in the community." Her standing in the community? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. I was parked. She hit me. That's not what our client states. And frankly, Mr. Reeves, you're going to have a difficult time proving otherwise. Mrs. Vanderbrook has no history of traffic violations. Can you say the same? I had gotten a speeding ticket 2 years ago, 15 kilometers over the limit on the highway. I suggest you speak with your insurance company, the associate continued. Though I should warn you, we're prepared to pursue this aggressively. Mr. Vanderbrook takes his wife's well-being very seriously. The line went dead. I sat in my truck outside a client's house, engine running to keep warm, and did something I almost never do. I Googled them. Marcus Vanderbrook was everywhere. Charity galas, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, business awards. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired and distinguished, always photographed with a practiced smile. The Vanderbrook Group had developed half the new condo towers that had sprouted up across Toronto over the last decade. His wife, Diane, was equally visible. She sat on the boards of 3 different charities, posted regularly on Instagram about her philanthropic work, and had been featured in Toronto Life magazine's society pages at least a dozen times in the past year. But as I scrolled deeper, I started noticing something odd. A small article from 2 years ago about a charity she'd founded, Hope for Tomorrow, which supposedly provided housing assistance to low-income families. Another mention of a fundraising gala that had raised $600,000. But when I searched for Hope for Tomorrow Charity Toronto, all I found was a basic website with stock photos and vague mission statements. No actual programs, no beneficiaries, no financial transparency. I dug deeper. Canada Revenue Agency has a public database of registered charities. Hope for Tomorrow was registered, but its most recent filing showed administrative expenses of 78% of total revenue. Only 22% had actually gone to charitable purposes, and even that was listed vaguely as housing assistance grants, with no recipients named. Something wasn't right. I spent the next week becoming an amateur investigator. I contacted the Canada Revenue Agency with questions about Hope for Tomorrow's charitable status. I reached out to housing advocacy groups in Toronto, asking if they'd ever worked with or heard of Hope for Tomorrow. Nobody had. Then I found the property records. Hope for Tomorrow owned a building in Scarborough, listed as a transitional housing facility. But when I drove out there, on a Sunday afternoon, I found a building that had been converted into upscale lofts, renting for $2,800 a month. Not exactly low-income housing. The property had been purchased 5 years ago for $1.2 million using charitable funds. It had been appraised last year at $3.8 million, and according to the corporate records I found on the Ontario Business Registry, the building was managed by a numbered company whose sole director was Marcus Vanderbrook. They were using the charity to buy real estate, claiming the properties as charitable assets, then converting them to profit-generating rentals. The administrative expenses were likely paying for their lifestyle while they built a real estate portfolio under the protection of charitable tax status. I sat in my truck outside that Scarborough building, my hands shaking. This was bigger than a parking lot fender bender. This was fraud. But I was just a landscaper with a damaged truck and a threatening legal letter. What was I supposed to do with this information? That night, I called my older brother David. He lived in Vancouver, worked as an accountant, and had always been the smart one in the family. I walked him through everything I'd found. "Holy shit," David said when I finished. "This is textbook charity fraud. The CRA would shut them down in a heartbeat if they knew." "But they're rich," I said. "They have lawyers. I have a $47,000 lawsuit hanging over my head. If I report this, they'll bury me." "Maybe," David said. "Or maybe rich people's biggest weakness is their ego. They've been getting away with this because nobody's looked closely enough. You're looking. Keep digging." I kept digging. I filed Freedom of Information requests for building permits on properties owned by Hope for Tomorrow. I contacted former tenants of the Scarborough building and found 3 who remembered being told it was transitional housing, only to have their rent raised to market rates within 6 months. One woman, a single mother named Patricia, told me she'd been evicted when she complained about the false advertising. "They told me it was a charity," Patricia said when we met for coffee. "They said I qualified for their housing assistance program. Then suddenly I'm getting eviction notices because I can't afford the new rent. When I tried to fight it, their lawyers made my life hell." I documented everything: photos, receipts, emails, testimony from Patricia and the other former tenants. I created a detailed timeline of property acquisitions, charitable revenue, and actual charitable expenditures. Then I did something that terrified me. I contacted the Toronto Star. The reporter I spoke with, Jennifer Walsh, had written several investigative pieces on real estate development in Toronto. When I laid out what I'd found, I could hear the interest in her voice. "This is good," she said, "but I need to verify everything independently. Can you send me all your documentation?" "There's something else," I said. "They're suing me for a car accident that was their fault. I think it's because I started asking questions." "That's witness intimidation," Jennifer said. "Let me make some calls." 2 weeks later, my phone rang at 6:15 inches the morning. I recognized the number from the law firm that had sent me the demand letter. "Mr. Reeves?" It was a different voice this time, older, more authoritative. "This is Gerald Henderson. I'm the senior partner at Henderson, Price and Associates. I know who you are. I'm calling about the matter between you and Mrs. Vanderbrook. We'd like to resolve this amicably. We're prepared to drop all claims against you if you'll sign a mutual release." I sat up in bed. What changed? There was a long pause. "Let's just say we've reassessed the situation. We'll cover the repairs to your vehicle and provide a small settlement for your inconvenience. $5,000. All you need to do is sign an agreement that you won't pursue any further action." "Any further action about what?" Another pause. "Mr. Reeves, this is a generous offer. I suggest you take it." "I'll think about it." I hung up and immediately called Jennifer Walsh. "They're panicking," she said. "We're publishing tomorrow. They must have gotten wind of it." The article hit the Toronto Star's website at 6 a.m. the next day. Charity or con? How one Toronto power couple built an empire on false philanthropy. Jennifer had done her job well. She'd verified everything I'd found and uncovered even more. Hope for Tomorrow had received over $2.3 million in donations over 5 years. Less than $400,000 had gone to actual charitable purposes. The rest had been used to acquire properties, pay administrative salaries to shell companies controlled by the Vanderbrooks, and fund a lifestyle that included a $1.8 million renovation to their Forest Hill mansion, billed as office space for charitable operations. My phone started ringing at 6:30 a.m. The first call was from Gerald Henderson, no longer sounding authoritative. He sounded desperate. "Mr. Reeves, we need to talk. Our previous offer stands, but we can increase it significantly. I'm not interested in your money. Please, you don't understand what you've done. Mrs. Vanderbrook is distraught. She's under a doctor's care. This article is destroying her reputation. She destroyed her own reputation when she decided to steal from people who actually need help. Mr. Vanderbrook wants to speak with you directly. He's on his way to your house right now." I looked out my front window. A black Mercedes was indeed pulling up to the curb. Marcus Vanderbrook looked different from his photos. Smaller, somehow, older. He approached my door with his hands visible, like he was approaching a spooked animal. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Mr. Reeves," he said, and his voice was shaking. "Please, we can make this go away. Name your price. There is no price. Everyone has a price. $1 million. Tax-free. Offshore account. You never have to work again. I thought about my daughter Emma, about the drawings on my fridge, about the kind of man I wanted to be when she visited. You know what the saddest part is? I said. You actually had everything. Money, success, respect. You didn't need to steal from a charity. You were already rich. It wasn't stealing, he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. It was just, we were optimizing the charitable assets, creating sustainable revenue streams. You were stealing from people who needed housing, from people who donated thinking they were helping. You were stealing. His face crumpled. They're going to charge us, aren't they? The CRA, Revenue Canada, the police. We're going to lose everything. You should have thought about that before you hit my truck and tried to intimidate me into silence. That was Diane. She panicked. She thought if we scared you, you'd back off. I told her it was a mistake, but she wouldn't listen. She never listens. He looked at me with bloodshot eyes. Please. Our daughter is getting married in 3 months. Our son is in his first year at University of Toronto. This will destroy them. You destroyed them, not me. He stood there for another moment, then turned and walked back to his Mercedes. I watched him drive away, then went inside and made breakfast. The Canada Revenue Agency opened an investigation that same day. The Ontario Provincial Police followed 48 hours later. Within a week, hope for tomorrow's charitable status was revoked, and the Vanderbrooks were facing multiple charges of fraud, tax evasion, and false pretenses. The lawsuit against me was quietly dropped. A check arrived to cover my truck repairs, though I had to laugh at the amount. They'd sent $8,000 for a repair that cost $2,200. Even in their desperation, they couldn't help but try to buy goodwill. I donated the extra $5,800 to an actual housing charity, one with transparent financials and real programs that helped real people. The trial took 18 months. I testified, along with Patricia and the other former tenants. The Vanderbrooks' lawyers were as good as advertised, but you can't argue with bank records and property filings. Marcus Vanderbrook received 4 years in federal prison. Diane got 3. Their assets were seized to repay the defrauded donations and penalties. The Vanderbrook group collapsed when investors realized the company had been propped up by fraudulent charitable money. I followed the news coverage, but mostly I focused on my business. Spring came, then summer, and landscaping season was busier than ever. Word had gotten around about what happened, and suddenly people wanted to hire the guy who'd taken down the Vanderbrooks. Mrs. Patterson insisted on giving me a bonus that summer, though I'd told her a dozen times it wasn't necessary. You did something important, she said, handing me an envelope with an extra $500. You showed people that money doesn't put you above the law. That matters. Emma visited that weekend. She was 8 now, getting tall, starting to ask complicated questions about the world. Dad, she said as we ate ice cream at the park near my house, my friend's mom said you sent some bad people to jail. I thought about how to explain it. I helped expose some people who were doing bad things. They made their own choices. I just made sure everyone knew the truth. Were you scared? Yeah, I admitted. I was pretty scared, but you did it anyway. That's what being brave means. Being scared but doing the right thing anyway. She thought about that, then returned to her ice cream. I got a letter 6 months after the verdict, forwarded through my lawyer. It was from Marcus Vanderbrook, postmarked from the federal prison in Kingston. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was short. Mr. Reeves, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that you were right. We had everything, and we threw it away because we always wanted more. My marriage is over. My children won't speak to me. I've lost my reputation, my freedom, and my family. But I've gained something I never had before: clarity. You could have taken the money. Most people would have. The fact that you didn't, that you chose principle over profit, has given me time to think about the choices I made. I wasted my life chasing things that didn't matter. Don't make the same mistake. You have a daughter who looks at you like you're a hero. That's worth more than anything I ever built. I read the letter twice, then filed it away with all the other documents from the case. Sometimes I drive past the Scarborough building that started everything. It's been converted into actual affordable housing now, managed by a legitimate nonprofit. Patricia lives there, in a unit she can afford, with protections that ensure she can't be arbitrarily evicted. The parking lot where Diane Vanderbrook hit my truck has been repaved. The Loblaws is still there, still owned by a different company now that the Vanderbrook Group's assets were liquidated. Sometimes I see Ron, the manager who tried to help me get the security footage. He always waves. My truck finally died last year. I replaced it with a newer model, nothing fancy, but it runs well, and the heater works. Emma helped me pick it out, insisted on a blue one because it's her favorite color. I think about the Vanderbrooks sometimes, about how a simple car accident unraveled an entire empire of lies, about how arrogance and greed made them sloppy, made them think they were untouchable. But mostly, I think about the lesson I learned, and the one I've tried to pass on to Emma. Your character isn't tested when things are easy. It's tested when standing up for what's right costs you something, when the powerful try to intimidate you into silence, when taking the easy money means compromising your principles. I could have taken their settlement. I could have walked away with enough money to make my life comfortable, to never worry about truck repairs or slow seasons, and I would have spent the rest of my life knowing I'd been bought. Instead, I have something better. I have my daughter's respect. I have the knowledge that I did the right thing, even when it was hard. I have the satisfaction of knowing that a charity fraud scheme was exposed and that actual people are being helped now instead of exploited. The money wouldn't have been worth it, not for a second, because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. You have to look at your reflection in the mirror, at your child across the dinner table, and know that you stood for something when it mattered. The Vanderbrooks had everything money could buy, but they didn't have integrity. They didn't have honor, and when the truth came out, all that money couldn't save them. I'm a landscaper. I drive a used truck and live in a modest house, but I can sleep at night. I can look my daughter in the eye, and I know that when I was tested, when I had every reason to take the easy way out, I chose the hard right over the easy wrong. That's worth more than any settlement, any bribe, any amount of money they could have offered. That's worth everything.